Recording in progress.
All right. Oh. Yeah, I think that's better. All right. Good evening, everyone. On this gorgeous evening, it's Tuesday, April 11th. Public Works, Properties, and Sustainability Committee meeting. Call to order. We do have quorum, and we have a couple people joining us virtually. Kristen, is visual roll call okay? Perfect, thank you. And the agenda was properly posted? Perfect, thank you. Then we can move on to item 3, public appearances. Public's opportunity to speak about any subject that is not a specific agenda item. Do I have anyone? We don't have anyone in the room here. Doesn't look like we have anyone online. So hearing none, then we can move on to item 4, old business. Discuss and consider direction on Forest Ridge green space. So this is coming back from quite a few months ago. That kind of little island in the midst of properties. So Brian, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Heidi. As you remember, this was the property, the green space between Forester and Main Street. It's kind of a property that the village owns. We received a complaint last fall of somebody one of the homeowners was cutting a tree down. Another homeowner had complained about it. So it's been brought before you. This area has several personal items on the property that we've allowed over time. But moving forward, the committee, last we spoke, it was, should we post signs? Should we ask the public to remove their items, or the possibility of even selling it or giving it away? So we kind of threw a lot of those options out there, and just wanted to bring it back to kind of try and maybe work towards a finalization on this. I do have our legal team on here. Rick is here to maybe give a little guidance on what we can and can't do, or what we should or shouldn't do. So, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at. So I don't know, Rick, I know we talked, there is the option. I mean, we talked about several things, right? I mean, you can't build on the property. It has an easement through it. It's got our stormwater through it. Could you sell it? I guess you could evenly divide it up and sell it to each homeowner, but who's to say that a homeowner's going to say no? And then what do you do with it? You can give it away, but then are you taxing that? To a point, it's a, I don't want to say useless piece of property, but you can't do much with it. So there is we do have the option to just maybe post some signs and ask people to remove their items. But again, it's before you due to a complaint generated by the public. And that's kind of the historical background of the area. So I don't know if anybody's got any comments or thoughts in regards to it, but.
I guess, Brian, can you clarify? So obviously we have the right to tell people they can't cut the trees down if they're on village-owned property. Do we have to do anything? Can we just leave it the way it's been, and people now understand that it's village property and they can't cut the trees, but if they're using it, they realize that if we had to do something, they would have to move their personal items off the property. I guess a little guidance maybe on that. Do we have to do something?
I mean, as far as the committee's concerned, I guess, I would kind of ask Rick on that one. But, at this point, we do have piles of branches being stacked. There is a concern as far as the easement that's there. It's a very small one. At this point, we probably can't get equipment in there to take care of the trees that we do have in there. I guess it's falls a little bit of a liability by having, a gym. I think there's like a play set out there. They did have an ice rink in there last year. I guess with our inability to get back there and really address maybe some of the tree issues, if there are any or some do arise, I do have concerns about that.
Brian.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue is having those structures out there or the improvements out there that shouldn't be, because technically that's our property and we have an easement or there could be some things where we need to get back there and access it, and we don't want to have any physical impediments to that. There's not really a concern with like adverse possession at this point. Essentially, that isn't an issue for municipal property. Uh, but we definitely don't want to be in a situation where somebody is injured on that property. I mean, most likely the village is going to be immune from any suits, but there could be situations where that immunity is pierced. Especially if there's like a known danger on the property and we're not doing anything to address it. So best practice would be if, since it's not like a public park or anything like that, it would be to just make sure that we're not letting anybody else on that land, or if we do want to sell it, what we would essentially have to do is do a CSM to split that up to the adjacent property owners, and then we could convey it or sell that land to those owners. But again, we'd have to split that up with the CSM. We couldn't just abandon it, essentially. It would need to go through a formal process there where the village conveys it in some manner. So I guess the two main options here would be keep the land, but then you have to make clear that no one else can use it, or you split the parcel up and give it away to the neighbors or sell it to the neighbors.
What does CSM stand for?
Certified survey map. Yep.
And what does that cost? Just roughly $1,000.
Yeah, I mean, they're overly expensive. You're gonna be creating a handful of potential parcels here, at, $5,000 maybe when you're done. So,
Get out of this and get as little money as possible.
right,
It's not doing the village any good. It means a lot to those people, but
Right.
it doesn't mean anything for us as the village, right?
right, maybe it wouldn't cost you anything. Maybe there's a value to the land if you're gonna sell it to somebody potentially, or maybe they,
Paying for something they already
Right.
feel like they have.
right, maybe they cover those CSM costs or
Yeah, that'd
something
be nice.
as part of it.
That'd be great.
So just as I understand it, Brian, and just to be clear, I know this is kind of zoomed out so we can see the whole thing here, so it might be harder to see my cursor. I'm going to try to move it on there. There's like an arrow right here in the street. You guys can kind of see that jumping around maybe? So the easement to get back there must be along this green sewer and blue storm sewer line that comes to the back. And
Correct.
then the green sewer line looks like it actually runs throughout the actual parcels of those houses where we have a physical easement. And the storm is sitting in this large parcel that's basically owned by the village.
Who was the line south of that?
This is hydrites, I believe. That's all hydrite to the south.
South of them.
Yeah. I looked at this and I think Conservancy Court, do we have any stormwater concerns of this area?
Nothing like Conservancy Court necessarily, but we would need an easement over that existing storm in there. Because that's essentially there to keep, I believe, and I forget where exactly, but there's a pump in there that's pumping the groundwater out into the storm to keep it from becoming a Conservancy Court. So we'd need if we draft the CSM, we'd still have to have easement rights to get back there.
You'd still want-
And just to add to that, JJ, with the easement, we would want to make sure we can access that and not have any sort of like physical structures on top of that easement. So I don't know if the easement right now is just depicted on the original plat for this area, or if it's like a formal easement agreement. But we would probably want to do some sort of, record some easement agreement on there, or like, just so it's clear what our rights are, and that way there's not any confusion, and essentially make sure that nobody's putting physical structures over that easement area.
We may have some of that already. in some
Yeah.
of the easements.
It's been a long time, but that line, that green line, I think it's a platted easement. You'd have to check the subdivision plat to confirm. We had a neighboring property owner years and years ago that was making some sort of an addition onto their house that we had to work with them on to allow us to continue to use our easement area. I think we came to a common agreement with the landowner, but that was at the time the way for us to do that.
Yeah,
With the utilities running through the property, by the time you had an easement over the top of those, there's not much usable left. I guess the other guidance I'd be interested in is that even as a public entity, can we just sell this to, if one of the property owners there wanted to buy it, or do we legally have to offer it to everybody in the world on MLS first, and if that's the case, you can't sell a piece of property that doesn't have a driveway or street access to it, which means, can we even sell it to anybody that doesn't have adjacent property to it right now? Is it kind of a moot point that we just tell everybody to get their stuff out and we just continue to own it?
Yeah, so we could do, basically we can come to some sort of agreement with the property owners. We don't have to do like any public process of, trying to get the best possible deal here. If we were to come to some sort of agreement with the property owners, we could basically do a CSM and essentially do a lot line adjustment, where we're just conveying that portion of the property. So it's not creating like a separate parcel that's gonna be distinct. It would just be adding that little chunk of land onto one of those the neighboring properties.
Rick, would we have?
And
Go ahead. Sorry, Mike.
oh, sorry, go ahead. Are we asking for more trouble if all of a sudden you sold this giant piece to just one of those property owners? Do we now have all those other property owners up in arms at us? I'm just trying to think of all the possible scenarios here.
Yeah, I mean, that's potentially a concern, right? If you don't get all the property owners in agreement here and one buys and one doesn't, then we still have the issue of, all right, we need to have access to this parcel so we can make sure that nobody else is using it. So there's still gonna be some enforcement issues. So, maybe that's one position you take, is it's an all or nothing deal where everybody has to agree to it, or we just don't allow anybody access.
Right. Rick, I was thinking, could you treat it as like we would treat let's say this was a public right-of-way, right? So you split it down the middle, and everybody that's adjacent to it, you talk to all the property owners, say, we're gonna sell this, right? And we split it down the middle, and everybody has a right to their frontage, or their half, basically, on all the lines put up to that. And if you don't want it, you don't have to buy it, but everybody gets a right to buy a piece of it. So all these lines on either side would come and meet in the middle, halfway in the middle. And the people that don't want it, the other people could then, as long as it's touching their parcel, buy that other piece. I know that makes it muddy, but you gave everybody a fair shot to buy their portion, right?
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about this as well. It's just, if people don't buy it, then we sort of have this crisscross pattern.
We do, yeah.
So it's just a policy decision at that point of how the village would want to move forward.
Can we send the property owners a letter and request some kind of response with a postage paid, something or other? Like, these are the things we're considering. Would you prefer one of these options? And like, it's purchase the property and request to subdivide it, or remains in village possession. You move all of your property, your personal property off of it, or I don't know if there's another thing we want to list on there, but with kind of survey the surrounding property owners, or is there some reason why we wouldn't want to do that?
I think if the village is interested in trying to convey these parcels, that would be one way of handling this, because you're making that direct contact with them, or, just trying to either talking with them one-on-one or just getting everybody in the same room. I don't know, that might be a little difficult, but yeah, just sending out that letter, just saying this is what we're considering, to either split it up and divide it among the neighboring property owners, or we're just gonna, if that's not the direction the village wants to go, I think you still send a letter just saying, hey, this is our land, we can't use it anymore, and we put up some signs to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
If we do go that route of potential, of contacting them with the potential for a sale, we should know a dollar value in our minds before we go to them, because that's the very first question they're gonna have. Okay, you're gonna sell it to us for $1 since it's no good to you, or is it gonna be $20,000 for each of us, in which case, sorry, we're out.
Yeah, that makes, yeah.
And it might be useful to have that in the form of a meeting. I don't know, whether a meeting or a letter is better, but it'd be nice to get a kind of an interactive exchange. Maybe you start with a letter, but then request a meeting. I'm not sure, whatever you guys want to do.
could we send a letter and then for, that this topic will be on our next agenda, and if you can't make it, you can provide comment to such and such email or phone number ahead of the next meeting?
Yep, for sure.
You know, you got owners to the north, to the west, east, and all directions. You know, you get some, I just see confusion if the neighbor on the east side wants the parcel, but the neighbor to the north wants it as well. I just, you know, and if 2 or 3 want to buy, but 3 or 4 don't want to buy that piece of land. And then they start throwing garbage out there, and we haven't gained anything here. I think the easiest first step is to sign it up and say, butters, please remove the property by the end of X amount of 90 days, or else it's not going to go for it. Sure. I mean, I like the idea of getting rid of it. I don't know how, I can't remember the history of why we ended up with this being the village partial, but I just think there's a lot of it. Challenges with trying to sell. It'd be great if everybody said you want it, but I think you're going to find some that can't afford it, don't want it, et cetera, for the reasons, but.
I was just gonna say the same thing. I think
Yeah.
I think you may have the same issue if we try and give it away. There's gonna be people of these 14 potential, for whatever reason, don't even want free, let alone if we're trying to sell it.
Yeah.
Unless we're willing to subdivide it, do all that headache and do all that spend and just give it to them for $1, but.
Or meet them halfway, I'm not sure.
But they may not want to maintain,
They might not want it,
yeah,
right?
no.
They may not want it.
And we're still gonna need a fairly large easement, like Mike said, to get down and maintain that or have access to it. So there's still gonna be an easement, even if we divide it, that we're gonna need to get in there on. And you're gonna wanna make sure you have enough room. That kinda cuts through the middle of what we're kinda giving away, right? As that pipe cuts through there.
So if we're seriously, you know, if one of the options is seriously giving it away, I'd like to, I mean, I don't know if this is discussed and considered, I didn't look. I'd almost make a motion that we retain ownership and let everybody know to get their stuff out of there and just hold on to it. I mean, we're just gonna spend money to give the land away or even to sell it for $1. What's the hurt in just keeping it in case we need it for stormwater treatment or access to these utilities or anything like that?
Yeah.
Did I hear you made that into a motion, Mike?
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion that we retain ownership of the parcel, and send letters to all the adjacent landowners that that is public property and they are to remove their private, improvements from the property within whatever we designate as the time, 30 days, 60 days.
I'll second that.
Do we want to talk about mowing and maintenance?
Thank you, I was just gonna bring that up. If they currently maintain it, so we got prepared to either mow it, or do we have to do anything with the easement there? Because the other
I
option
guess
is that
that
we
was
make
my
it,
next question, yeah. Just
we can
leave
make it wild property, native prairie, and that, and in 5 to 10 years, they would never know that they own that land, essentially, as long as the easement allows that.
Yeah. And that might get them coming to the next meeting, and then we can just, we can ask them, what do you want? Why don't you guys agree on something, and then we'll consider it, you know?
Right.
Right.
But at least they have some motivation, right? We're not like trying to sell them on something.
And I don't think we need to be secretive, and we can even say, like, it would take a,
No, I'm not saying.
like, no, I know, but like, it would take a cohesive, movement, and like, we're open to talk, but the whole 3/4, 7/8, like, it just doesn't work, so.
Right, let them do the organizing and
Yeah.
talking amongst themselves and come back to us.
Yeah.
So out of clarification for the motion, just, it sounds like removal of everything off that property. You do see the stuff that I've zoomed in on,
Yeah.
what appears to be a playground.
Yep.
Appears to be a structure of a building of some sort, larger fire pit, probably landscaping, patio space. At least what I'm seeing, and these yellow lines aren't perfect, but they're pretty darn close
Yeah.
on being counted.
Right.
They're gonna come visit
Yeah,
us no
they
matter
are.
what next
They'll be here next meeting.
We're gonna have visitors.
Right.
And then,
You know, I don't have a problem if they want to continue to mow it you know, to use it as yard space, but not put improvements on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll leave that to Brian and his staff to decide whether we would do any kind of maintenance on it, or whether we care if they do maintenance on it.
I guess,
I-
does that
Concerns on
extend to
every
the
green space
original issue?
on-
Does the guy who was cutting down a tree to maintain the other side get to do that as well?
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. I mean, it kind of an all or nothing. I mean, I think going this route, it's abandon mowing it too, leave that for us. I would prefer to let it go back to wild. I mean, we can always, you know, what we've done in the past in these certain areas is we've just put out stakes next to the manholes and painted them green or orange as for us to locate them, but, I would prefer that if we go this route to abandon the whole thing, abandon all maintenance there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the all or nothing. I think we can be transparent and say that's our plan. Like, if we could actually come to an agreement and say that's our plan for this property. But like the idea of them mowing it, you know, one of them mows it, the other one doesn't, it just seems that it just makes, it allows for more of a mess. And as much as it's gonna be a pain in the butt for them, it's kind of what we have to do, I feel like, my personal opinion.
I'm assuming with the motions that went through, this does not get put on next month's agenda.
Right, there's public appearances.
They can, yes, right, they can go about it that way, that's.
And then, based on their comments, if we want to add a
If we-
future
Correct.
agenda item, then we
Yep.
can. Is that,
Just clarifying.
yeah? Do we have enough direction for the letter then, based on the conversation?
Yeah.
Okay, does anyone
Yeah,
else?
And I
yeah.
think,
Go ahead, Rick.
I think JJ or Brian, whoever is writing the letter, we may want to include this map, sort of showing the lines, and so the property owners say like, you know, if this is your improvement, you need to remove it. Just so it's clear like what their responsibility is. And I can help you out with the letter.
I was gonna say, thank you, Rick, I was gonna say, upon drafting it, I'll probably run it by you before we send it out.
Okay, does anyone else have any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carries. Thank you, and thanks for your work on this item. Then we can move on to new business, discuss village message board use guidelines. We did talk about this last meeting as well, and right after last meeting, we had a lot of requests from various places, businesses, kind of church-affiliated organizations. So that's when Brian and I talked and decided we should come back to committee and talk about, you know, the use guidelines and what types of organizations are eligible and how an approval process. Because we do have a lot of people doing a lot of things in Cottage Grove, which is great, but which ones do we want to use our government resources on the message board? So I'll turn it over to Brian, add anything else on?
Yeah, it was getting to a point, I think they were gonna be out there 6 straight weeks, which again is okay, it's what they're for, right? It does take quite a bit of staffing time to go out there and change that, and, but it's, you know, we've helped out civic groups, which is, you know, totally understandable, and that's what they're there for. But, you know, when we start getting requests from the private industry and, you know, private events that are happening, I'm just afraid it's gonna turn into, you know, it's Bob's birthday, say hi. You know what I mean? So it's gonna get a little bit out of control. I did kind of draft up a quick memo here of what, you know, to go through the process of approval on it. You know, we can tweak that however you'd like, but I do think that you know, what we are seeing is, hey, next week I got an event happening, can you get them out there? If we have an approval process, it'll give people a little more time to think about it and know what they have to present to us as far as for an approval process. So, but I don't know what kind of guidelines, you know, that the committee wants as far as, is it just for civic groups? Can we offer it to private, you know, residents or, you know, industry to utilize that? I leave that up to the committee to kind of decide. I mean, That's kind of where I'm at with it.
Any input on guidelines who would qualify for using, I mean, it was definitely right after our discussion, a few unique things. I was like, ooh, I don't know if we want to utilize the message boards for private business events or, yeah, a church-sponsored type of event as well. So those were two that came up right away that I was like, oh, I didn't even bring this up at last meeting, so.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with any nonprofit or club using it. I mean, I know I'm a member of the Lions. We got great use out of it. Spaghetti dinner was a great success because of that.
Right.
So that's, I guess, my point of view. But if somebody else feels strongly, I can understand that.
My notes on this is make sure to include dates, requested dates on this. I'd put a note on there saying that if not received within 1 week to the posting or 2 weeks, then we have a right to refuse it. I'd say that, I don't know, I don't like private, essentially, but if we do private, let's charge them. So, I don't know, charge whatever, if they really, really want it, we can charge $100 or whatever, $50 a day, I don't know what we want to do, but, and then,
Going out too often, then it just kind of gets, I don't know.
well, yeah, it's
Yeah,
like,
but I don't think people, I don't know.
I mean, I kind of agree, I don't, the backlash is that all of a sudden we have tons of requests, but,
Yeah.
but also you put in there, like, we only have so many of them, right? So you can say, you know, again, village has the right to, refuse or choose, you know, on competing dates, like, just put that little stars in there, and then, if we have to modify in the future years because of something that's too much, we can, but.
So, yeah, I don't know, I mean, I think maybe once a week is max, right? Let's work getting it out, goes out there, right?
Yeah, once they're out there, it's fine. It's just what you tend to run into is it does take time when when you get a message to put on there. There's actually quite a bit of thought that has to go into it because, like, when it was the spaghetti dinner, we had to change, I mean,
Yeah.
not that it takes a long time, but, there is some thinking you have to do, and it's nice to do that back at the garage versus, on Highway N by the roundabout. A little bit of concern on my part is that, the message boards are intended for safety and for alerting the public. My fear is that they're going to get to a point where somebody's whatever. It's just another one of those.
Yeah.
It's just another one of those messages,
Yeah,
Um,
about that.
Right. I do want people to be aware and to really pay attention to these, not just blow them off like it's another message from, the.
In line.
Yeah. No, not at all. But so like I said, I do have a little bit of concern with that.
I think there's some nice language that our lawyer friends can put in there just to make sure like none of that happens, of like no advertising, no, I don't know what else would be a problem, but I mean,
Nothing improper.
yeah,
And we decide
exactly.
what's improper.
Exactly, like we gotta like make sure that we have final say no matter what on the timing, on what it's said and who gets it. But I mean, I think this is the right movement. We should have one of these.
We have a specific location that this would be placed for that purpose. So, in other words, if it's, say, out by the Quick Trip on School Road, BB's, that's where I saw it one time.
Yep.
In that's where it's always gotta be, or,
Not necessarily. That's just what we found is, I don't know, I don't want to say the sweet spot, but it's already got a pad there. It's nice to have that level surface to put it on. The other one is out on BB, out there. So,
well, I'm just thinking that if we're gonna use it for this purpose, let's specify it has to be at maybe at 4 spots in town or something like that. Because you may need to move it on Oak Street to advance warrant of a future painting job or something like that. So that, I guess my mind, to kind of somewhat hopefully combat the concern of, oh, whatever, if you see it in your neighborhood, it's there for a reason.
Right.
Not to let you know that there's a block party or
sure.
something like that.
Yeah, I guess, we haven't really, those are kind of the two corridors leading into town, so I don't know if, historically, if we ever really looked for an alternative spot, but we can definitely put some efforts into that.
Yeah, the only other,
I-
oh, go ahead, Mike.
I was just gonna say, I mean, my suggestion, clearly the location that it's installed is I would say, up to Brian and his staff. You know, if somebody wants on their street to advertise something, I would say no. It's either at the entrances to the village or it doesn't get used. I certainly would be one way to combat that. And I just worry a little bit about the for-profit people that want to use it. I mean, for what billboard space costs and a flashing sign in front of your business, this is the cheapest thing they could ever get. I can see it being overwhelmed on the private side. Once one private individual gets to put it up for a for-profit event, I just worry about it getting out of control. And then we have to pick and choose between different companies, and now all of a sudden we're advertising agents instead of trying to do something good for nonprofit civic groups throughout the town.
Yeah, yeah, and I agree. And then it's, I mean, one of the events that someone was asking, it was kind of a drinking-based event, and so, you know, yeah, it gets between choosing what types of businesses are allowed and not, like that, it's a whole, like, you don't want to get in the weeds, I don't think, on that.
Right. I mean, I love having it for the nonprofit events, for instance, you know, the Lions Spaghetti Dinner, pasta dinner, and the other things that it's been used for. I don't think it's been too overwhelming. The other thing, you know, if you want to have a little bit of control, you could say, you know, we can't have it up more than, you know, there's got to be a week space between events. And if your event doesn't fit that spacing, just so that it's not up there, like you're saying, 6 weeks straight.
Yeah, I like that.
Do you think, this is just a discuss guidelines, do you think this gives you enough to go on for the guidelines? Or do you have any other questions that we didn't cover?
No, I think I'm okay. I mean, I can put something together and add to what I've already kind of created here and present it next meeting if you'd like.
Does anyone else have anything they want to?
Well, are we,
Yeah.
you know, I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking the festival, garage sale day, we had the Easter bunny egg thing at the school things like that is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Couldn't we just, I mean, is there a requirement or do we have to open it up to nonprofit or, you know, for-profits? I mean, couldn't we, so this is the way it is. It's going to be the Lions Club, the fire department, the whatever.
Yeah, and we can definitely do that. You know, I just don't think we've ever really approached this many requests in such a short period of time. And I guess I didn't feel like I was in a position, do you want me to just say no or yes? You know what I mean? I just wanted a little guidance myself as far as how to approach that.
Okay. Anybody else have anything else on this item? Otherwise, Brian, you can bring back the official wording. We can officially implement it next month.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, then moving on down to 5B, discuss 2023 through 2026 road maintenance plan. And there was a page in your packet kind of with an overview of the maintenance projects we're looking at. Go ahead.
I just wanted to give the committee just a little vision of what we're looking at working towards as far as our maintenance program on roads in the next 5 years. You know, if there's any questions in regards to why or what we're doing.
The 2020, didn't we have like geographic locations that were like phase A, B, C, D, something like that?
Yeah, we're still using that. Yep.
Okay.
Do any of these areas, are they in spots where we don't have sidewalks now, but we should think about having sidewalks, or not really? Or did we not get that far? Which is fine if we didn't.
So, well, that's actually in the capital plan. Most of that stuff is. But, you know, for 2023, what we're doing is we're looking at our approaches and our sidewalks to make them more ADA accessible. I guess I'd have to look at the capital plan. There may be some adjustments to make here on Crawford in regards to connecting with that trail up on West Oak. So there may be some adjustments to be made here, but guess I just want to, you know, kind of I'm moving pretty fast here, trying to get this all together. And I know JJ put together, you know, his historical capital plan for road projects, which we've looked at, and some of this overlaps on that, but it's hard because, you know, it's a little difficult, right? You can put like an 8-year plan together, probably 3 years where it actually works out. You know, things get moved, things get adjusted. So this is you know, I just wanted the committee to have kind of a look at what we're looking at for doing for road maintenance this year and upcoming years.
Okay.
Good.
Brian, is the 25,000, is that the sidewalk only item, or is that like just the engineering portion of it? What's that referring to?
So Safe Step will come in and they'll grind down, it's usually like 3/4 of an inch or less as far as a tripping hazard. And then they will also mark the areas that are exceeding that. We will then look at them and then decide if it's going to be pulled and re-poured or if they need to go back and regrind.
Okay, so that's just the safe step portion of it then?
Correct. Well, no, that's the Safe Step portion, and that's, it's about 50/50 on the Safe Step and the pull out and re-pour.
Okay, so that's the sidewalk portion of the
Correct.
capital project?
Yes,
and
well, of the
then-
maintenance program, yeah.
Okay, the only other clarification on there is 4-inch mill and overlay. I'm assuming at 4 inches, there's nothing left. You're taking off all the pavement, fine grading and repaving, similar to what was done on Wells Bridge last year.
Yeah, correct. You know, I just threw these numbers in there, to be honest with you, because obviously we're going to readdress these in the upcoming years. They may not be a 4-inch mill and overlay. This is just, you know, a number I threw in there, Mike. That's all.
Okay, nope, that's fine, I just was clarifying.
Yep,
Well,
you
I
bet.
guess with that, unless anybody else has comments, I'll motion to approve and move forward with the schedule.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and second. I did just have one quick question. Do we send out letters before the work starts to residents on those areas or some kind of notification? Doesn't have to be a letter, just a notification for wherever we're doing work. And
In the past, we have for even the quick, no overlay lots and stuff, it's pretty simple to send
Okay.
those out.
Well, these folks will have to move their cars, I'm assuming, and I don't know about mail delivery, but they're probably gonna have to park somewhere else.
For a short period of time, yeah. I mean, you like to say a week, right? You hope it's that. We do have some storm issues over on Crawford that need to be addressed. It may hold up the project a little bit. But yeah, you're correct. But, you know, they will ramp at the approaches. People can use that until they're ready to pave. You know, so at the time of paving, you're probably looking at a week or two.
okay.
Yeah, and that's, all those notifications are taken care of with the contractor once the project is a project. I don't think we send out anything ahead of time saying we're planning on this for 3 years from now.
Okay. Can always move the message board over there before you start.
Yeah, right?
Well, great.
All right, any other comments on this item then? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carries.
Just a quick question, looking back historically, Brian, is this a similar amount of work that we've done? This seems to me, I look at 23 and think that's not a lot.
Well, we have a total of, don't quote me on these numbers, $330,000 in this account that has to account for the chip sealing, crack filling, sidewalks, and mill and overlays. You know, we're anticipating this project is going to be around $250,000 for these two roads that we're looking at doing this year, which again only leaves us with 80. And I don't say that, I mean, it's a lot of money, but that'll be taken care of in chip sealing. And then obviously right off the bat, we have $25,000 that we need to set aside for sidewalks. So it leaves us about $60,000 for chip sealing.
Okay.
So that's then on this year's, which is another item. We're specifically looking at the projects then for this year. Is that kind of the next item on the agenda then?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's all laid out in the Strand memo, is that?
Yeah, Brian asked us to assist in that maintenance when it comes to these projects where we're actually gonna mill and overlay, pulverize, or kind of come up with some options. So this year's, we put a task order together to kind of help them through the design services, to put some planning documents together, drawings, help him bid the project, contract for it for a contractor because it is a larger kind of overall kind of paving job, and then help them through construction a little bit. Like he said, that will also involve fixing some curb ramps and making sure ADA's, applied out there along the sidewalks on those curb ramp openings, and some storm sewer, some minor storm sewer kind of additions and fixes out there along that route. So this includes both streets, Crawford Drive from West Oak to BB, and then Woodview from Crawford Drive up to West Oak. The goal would be to try to replace all the pavement on Crawford Drive. Woodview, we're considering probably just maybe a mill and overlay of that section, so maybe half of it would come off. But we're gonna put some alternatives together for that to make sure that we can hit the budget numbers, right? So maybe we can't get all of the asphalt off, but we're milling and overlaying just the portion of Woodview Drive. So we'll give some different options, some different ways to bid it, and this is just basically the contracting for it on our end. We thought, it's kind of part of the budget, but we should bring it back forward just to this committee so they understand what we're doing as part of that.
And so we're looking for a motion to move ahead with this then? Is that?
Yes,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on this year's plan? Otherwise, looking for, I would make a motion to approve is it a contract as presented?
Yes.
Okay. Task order. Okay, motion and second. Any other discussion on this item? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. All right, then the next thing we have, discuss and consider R2 GPS collector purchase.
The reason I brought this to the committee, there's 10% that does come out of general on this. The R2 collector is, so Strand currently, they'll take care of our GIS on the new projects. Obviously, it's spelled out in the memo, but we just need to do a little more updating on our end as far as the old infrastructure. We do have John Bublitz, our utility superintendent, very familiar with this. He did a lot of GIS work in his last community he worked for, so I feel very confident that buying will assist us moving forward.
Data you get out is only as good as the data you put in, so.
Correct.
I will motion to approve the purchase of the R2 GPS collector.
Okay, I have a motion and second on this item. Any other comments or questions on this item? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye. 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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Then we'll keep moving right along to the engineer's report.
All right. So let's kind of add a formal report in the packet. Let's just generally kind of talk through that a little bit. Some of the developments that are still ongoing that will carry over into this year is Shady Grove over on the far west side. There's still some items to take care of there that they didn't fully get done last year. Some of it's restoration items, some infiltration basin items, and then some asphalt issues, both in the binder course and then also the surface course that they'll have to put on in the future as the homes are developed out there. So we've been kind of tracking those. We're talking to the developers so they can get those things done this spring. Authentics across the street from where we are right now also has a few things to yet take care of. A lot of it's with the dog park, so the asphalt pads kind of been laid out there, but they have to fully develop that parking lot on that side, the trail back to the dog park. That was dormant, it's seeded out there. It will, take off this spring and into the summer, and we'll make sure that it all's restored and the fencing's up so the dog park can be used. On the infrastructure side, there's a couple, this is more for utility side, there's a couple sewer fixes that they have internally with some dips in the line that they just need to take care of more on the warranty basis yet at this point. They fixed one, they have one more to fix. Otherwise, they're pretty much wrapped up. They dig back down and remove and replace. In some cases, they may be able to, if there's a dip, kind of work the pipe back up. Sometimes they're cutting a section out and relaying it. It's part of, when they get done with the utility, we see it all go in, right? We take shots on it as it's going in. They make sure they bed it correctly and backfill it correctly, but sometimes if they don't bed it real good or don't get enough compaction on it, it'll kind of sag or sink. So after the fact, after 30 days, they run back through. We require them to clean it and run a camera through it, and then you can see where these take place. As they install it, they also air test it to make sure there's no leaks right away. They plug both ends, but then this is more of the dipping that occurs at a later date. You obviously don't want the dips, right? Because you get a dip in a gravity main, and then it just starts to build up with solids, and it becomes a maintenance nightmare every year. You're making sure you're getting in there and jetting it out because you're constantly, filling that section up and taking capacity away, and maybe backing up your main. So this is sanitary. Yep, this is sanitary. One's fixed. They still have one to go. Other developments, I know, just so everybody knows, Dane County is now taking over as kind of the erosion control check, out here, and they've already started some of that. They've sent some of the developments some checks like we would and some suggestions early in the spring. I know they're meeting out on West Lawn because West Lawn is broken up into so many different phases. They're going to meet out with the Hamburg crew out there also to kind of walk that this week and just talk about erosion control holistically as part of that site. So that will be taking place out on West Lawn. Some other developments, Cottage Grove Commons, so that's the stuff along N over there. There's one section of sidewalk that still has to go in right along N. You probably see they finally got that hill kind of knocked down there, and they're starting to grade out. They have to put sidewalk in there. There's also a couple basins in there, stormwater basins that have appeared to silt in, as they construct. You get a lot of dirt and sediment that get into the sewer system, even though they have erosion control, and they've silted into a couple of those ponds. So we've been watching that, and we're asking for survey after the fact. And we're going to stay on them about cleaning those out because ultimately, you're going to take some ownership of those after the fact. We want to make sure they're built and they're not already silted in, and we're going to have to go back in a few years and dredge them out. So there's some bigger of the developments, Zilber Property Group to the north. They're in the TID to the north, so north of what would be the Amazon parcel. We're reviewing still site plans for the Faber Road extension that will be up there, so that will be part of the village's public infrastructure after the fact. And right now, there's also some conversations with the county going on out on the highway. Right now, with site distance coming up over that hill, it requires, if you're going to take a left out of that driveway and head north, as you would going to Sun Prairie, there's not adequate site distance. So the county right now is suggesting that movement should be restricted. You can right turn in from the north and right turn out going south. And as you're heading north, you can left turn in. But as you would leave there, they want a restriction that you should not turn left out. That's still in a lot of conversations, so you may see that change depending on what the solution is there. The county's kind of given a bunch of different solutions. They do say, you could turn right out and go down to the roundabout, make the U-turn and head north. It's not like there's a restriction there. It's just kind of a half a mile out of your way sort of thing. The developer and the county are still talking about it. The good news is the developer, 95% of the traffic that they projected coming to the site is coming from the south, so they can get in and get out how they anticipated. Otherwise, public works projects from last fall, the only thing that's remaining is on County Trunk Highway N, the RFB, so that rapid flashing beacon up by Limestone is not installed. Mike, this might be a question for you. So Art, the contractor Cattell up there, Art retired, and he was a superintendent, and we've been having a hard time trying to get a hold of someone there that will respond to us. Do you have any good ideas?
Well, Joe is, and I apologize, I don't know Joe's last name. Joe recently purchased the company from Wade Cattell, so he is the new owner. So I guess if you want a buck stops here answer, that's where I'd go
Yeah.
to.
Joe, do you know Joe's last name?
I don't. I could get it for you tomorrow. I just don't have it with me right now.
Yeah, I remember somebody saying Joe, and I'm trying to remember the last name too, so maybe we'll try there. I know they had it ordered. It's just, where is it? You guys, Hamburg did good getting
Yeah,
theirs out. You guys were kind of on the same timeline, so I'm assuming it's sitting somewhere.
Right.
And it just has to be installed. Before the Dunkin' Donuts open, right, and the sidewalk's getting completed over on that side fully, so, we want to get that out there as soon as possible. So the other last thing, and I know it's attached to this, is every year we update the village's standard details for their standard detail drawings, material cut sheets. There were some additions. Most of them are utility-based. I think that John, the new super utility, wanted, a superintendent wanted as part of the utility, but there are some minor additions to that. I noticed as it was attached, and I think I want to do this the following years, is it's not highlighted in the things we attached or changed, and that would have been very helpful.
I was going to ask you for that. That would be really helpful.
Right, and I think I could provide that. I just don't know them off the top of my head now, but I think if I look back, we could highlight something. I don't think there was anything major, unless you remember, Brian, if there was anything. There were some minor things changed throughout, maybe a couple additions. There was a handful of utility things, and it was more material-based or model number changes, to clarify some things. There wasn't any real big wholesale changes that I can remember.
One question I had on it was on the housing task force study. There was some talk about reducing street widths. So I don't know if we want to talk about that in future updates. Recommendations in the future.
I'll jump in real quick. I think we could probably include the whole report and maybe in the next month's packet, because I think it would line up pretty good, give this group a chance to look at it, and then if I recall Aaron's timeline, there were a number of items that would come here before they went to plan, so maybe it's a good idea to get it to this group. I don't even know if it needs to necessarily wait until the packet, I suppose I can just
Sure.
email it to everybody. But,
Yeah.
take a look, because there's a few of the recommendations. You don't feel like reading all 80 pages, just cruise to the back dozen or so and review the ones that would be relevant.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks. Any questions for Josh and his report? Thanks, and thanks. Working on all this.
Oh, one last thing. We should talk about this. It wasn't in my report. I forgot. I almost forgot now. Solar.
Oh, yeah, it's solar.
The solar field that's going up. I hear the staff at the building, both parks, public works, police, love it. I mean, there's been a lot of banging, a lot of footsteps, a lot of drills probably as they're like installing everything. Kristen's nodding her head, but I'm hearing that by the end of the week they should be done with most of the install. So we're getting close.
Great.
I don't know, was it this committee, Heidi, or was it a different, maybe it was board that you thought about potentially having like a ribbon cutting?
Yeah, I think
We'll have to figure that out, maybe on a date,
Yeah, I think we talked about it at this committee last month.
this committee.
I don't know if before next month's meeting, or?
If anything, maybe could we have the next meeting at the building? And just kind of give us
Yeah.
whoever knows anything about it.
Right.
Turn it on.
Can we get access
Yeah.
up to that?
Yeah,
Would that
that's
be
true.
kind of
You
weird?
don't have to see it on the roof. Do you have the equipment?
Can we drone it?
I think we should be able to drone it.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
reached
yeah.
out to Mike from Full Spectrum about that, and he thought it'd be well, first of all, we're still waiting on some component before we can actually turn it on. He said it's anticlimactic, there's no big dramatic anything, and with our installation, there's not much to look at unless you go up on the roof or have some photos, but he said, once we've got a little bit of data and you can show it on the savings we're seeing, you can actually show people the screen in real time. So he recommended letting it go for a while and then pretend you just turned it on and start showing people. I was gonna maybe talk to you, Heidi, at some point, we could see what we think looks like a good event, how we can do it.
Yeah, yeah.
And an additional note, make sure Charlie Rogers is
Absolutely.
invited too, because he was a big proponent very early on of making this happen.
Yep.
Yeah. Do we have anything about it to, well, we can talk about it to people at the Earth Day event that come to it. Because there is the Earth Day event a week from Saturday. I know, it's coming up fast. Where we'll have the rain barrels and compost bins and people that'll be there for a bunch of other stuff too. But it's definitely, yeah, it's something we, at least we can talk about how it's being installed if it's not done by then. Okay, any other questions on engineer's report? All right, then we can move down.
Thank you, Heidi. Well, number one, I don't know if anybody saw those, the light hangers on, over the trail on North Main. Those were just done by Alliant. I think it really improves the safety out there. Really, actually, I'm pleasantly surprised on how it turned out. So, you know, we may even try to extend that. I think it will go all the way to Limestone, if we can, to improve it out there a little bit too. We don't have that, the boulevard lighting out there that we do on the stretch after, so we'll look into that and see what we can do. Overview of the vehicle purchases. So as you're aware, I mean, as of a week ago, our vehicles weren't even in line for production. They couldn't get a date, you know. As it turns out, we're not, you know, I don't know how much we're even really saving going with the state anymore. I mean, when you start comparing vehicles, there's not much of a difference. We ended up getting two 2023 Chevy crew cabs, 4x4. We ended up coming in at the same price as we would have with these other vehicles. The only upside was we actually got them that day. We ended up, the incentives, received about $5,000 per vehicle on incentives. We also have 3 years of free oil changes and tire rotations, so basically they're maintenance free for the next 3 years. You know, I think the important thing is we came in at budget and got vehicles when we needed them. You know, they're a little bit of a limbo, right? I had no idea when we were receiving the vehicles. We kind of, so to speak, called an audible on this one. You know, after Marty left, it was a good opportunity to kind of revisit what our needs actually were with the two superintendents. You know, did we really need 2 3/4 tons? And it turns out that for our operations, not really. I mean, these trucks can tow. You know, the important thing too is with the crew cabs, we have the ability now to take one vehicle to a training. You know, we were always kind of fighting with the Jeep with parks, you know, and that was the only vehicle we had that could take more than 2 people. So I think this goes a long way. And, you know, I guess the upside is they're also 4 cylinders. We're getting decent gas mileage on them. I know we're always pushing for that, for the electric. You know, I think this is a step towards it. And I should think we're doing a good job of showing good efforts here. Frontier Communications, their project updates. Highway N is complete on that trail. What they're going to do is they're going to take about 20 feet of trail out of there and repave it. It was falling in towards that edge as it was left for 3 years and eroding. Also over on Clark Street, they're going to be taking about a 5-foot section of trail out of there sometime this spring. They've actually been good to work with as of recent, so I do keep in touch with my contact there, but I'm also not pushing it. I think these items will get resolved, you know, this spring, so I'm confident that. Yard waste wrap up, again,
Yep.
but that is now open. So did a little bit of different design out there. Dave, our street superintendent, kind of had a vision of what he thought would have always worked, and I think he's got a pretty good setup out there. We may actually look at, I know we've talked about using that parcel green space for a potential yard waste site. I think we're looking at different alternatives out there. We may look at trying to pave between the salt shed and the current Bonnie building, which would open that space up pretty good. I think we could save quite a bit of money by staying in that location. It's something we're going to try and fit in over the next year or two, you know, within the budget to maybe do some of as much work as we can ourselves, and then have a crew come in and pave it for us. So, And the last one on there is the Bonnie roof. I mean, I don't know if anybody's really taken a look at the pictures of that, but it's going to cost about, I can't remember the exact price. It was $4,000, I think, for a temporary repair, right? If we don't go temporary, we're replacing the whole roof at that point. I don't know how long it's going to last, but it's hard. It's a Band-Aid on top of Band-Aids, Yeah, yeah. I mean, without really knowing a timeline, it's hard to really know what to invest. So it is a Band-Aid upon a Band-Aid, but at the same time, we do have ceiling tiles falling in there. At least we won't have that. It'll keep the moisture out. For how long, I have no idea.
As we talk at the village board level about our capital thing, that's something I can make sure to convey, that we're Band-Aiding on top of Band-Aiding, and we need to figure something out, so we know how to go from there.
Nope, that's it, unless anybody's got any questions. There used to be 2 small bins. What we did is so our neighbor there, Toby, it was kind of, where we had it was right out from his garage. And weekends where we had to call a few people in to remove the yard waste because it started going a little bit away from his garage doors. And we made just one giant. I'm not going to disagree with you.
On our social media on how to correctly use it. Just a thought, I don't know. Food for thought. In my Canva and social media use. We'd make a TikTok.
Or we could just tell them to buy a compost bin.
We could, we have
Yeah,
them available.
right.
All right, any other questions for Brian?
The water damage, like we know there's no mold or anything, there's nothing more severe.
I think we got this. We did look into it, and we couldn't see anything. Usually you're not going to see mold show up for a little bit, whether it's a month or so, I'm not sure. But, we're definitely we're going to be aware of that area. We don't really work out of that section anyway, to a point. I mean, we have in a section of that office area, we do keep our flags in that, but it's separated from this certain area.
As long as you guys are aware, I don't want, yeah.
No, of
If it's
course.
mold.
No, we would, obviously we do provide masks and things of that nature. We wouldn't put anybody in any certain harm's way if we thought there was an issue there.
Flags just reminded me that the banners look very nice, so thank you.
That was something I didn't have on here because they were just done today. I mean, there's a few that got to be tweaked, but I thought they turned out really well.
I think so too. All right, anything else then on that? All right, then we've got a little business to take care of, to consider the minutes from March 7th, 2023 committee meeting. Any comments, questions, or edits? Motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Motion and second? All right, perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you, Kristen. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carries. Then we'll set tentative date for next meeting. We're looking at May 2nd. It's the first Tuesday. Does that sound okay for quorum? All right, perfect. Future agenda items. We'll have the official message board use guidelines to implement. there something else we just said? Well, we can talk about the unofficial solar, if we want to do that before that meeting, or if we want to have this meeting at MSB, if we can make that happen, or, I don't,
I don't think we can do virtual from there,
yeah, okay.
so that may be,
We could even do before and then.
we can do a
come here or
tour,
something.
sure.
Sure.
Otherwise, the letter for the green space on Forston,
Yep.
you would probably want, so.
Okay. Anyone else have any other items for next meeting? Oh, well, we could look at the housing task force or get that sent out. Super. Any other items? Otherwise, seeking one final motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Thanks, Larry. Do you have a second? Motion second, non-debatable. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Tried almost at an hour. Thanks for your time tonight. Enjoy the beautiful evening.